Alright, mates, we're in the jungle. First thing we're going to need to do, we're going to need to apply some Coppertone Water Baby sunscreen. Alright, we're just going to get a nice smooth layer going on. It's okay if it stays pretty white. Alright, we are ready to read. We are going to be reading Whale Song, Chapter 11. Now, I've put my book down because I've been in the jungle. Here we go. I'm about to read. Follow along with your own novels. I'm going to read in a normal voice too, don't worry. Chapter 11. Time stood still while I cowered in the bushes outside Annie's house. I was certain that she would discover me. Thankfully, she vanished inside. I was on my bike and down that road so quickly I didn't even have time to look back. I scrunched low over the handlebars and pedaled frantically, scared that she or her father would come after me. Please don't let her see me, I whispered. When I reached my house, I tossed my bike against a hydrangea bush, ran inside, and slammed the door. I leaned against it, panting. "Mom," I called, "I'm home." There was no answer, and my heart skipped a beat, until I found that note that my mother had left. She was at Nana's. I darted upstairs to my room and threw myself on the bed. Should I say something to my parents about Annie? In those days, people didn't get involved in other people's business. I was a terrified child, an innocent bystander who had witnessed unspeakable cruelty. But back then, I knew nothing about child abuse or the laws that protected children. What if no one believes me? I convinced myself that Annie and her father would hunt me down and do horrible things to me if I told anyone what I'd seen. I was sure that people would think I'd made it up to get back at her. So the only person I told was Goldie. The following week, Annie was back in school. I caught myself staring at her often and worrying about her father. One time I caught her glaring back at me. I spent the rest of that day looking over my shoulder, and I made sure that I never went into the washroom by myself. During social studies, I scribbled a note to Goldie and slipped it to her. She unfolded it in her lap, read it, and shook her head. The note said, "Should I tell someone what I saw?" In the end, I remained silent and scared. Before long, June was upon us, and I was ecstatic because that year my birthday fell on a Saturday. Saturday, June 18th, 1978. School rushed by in a blur of activities and exams. I couldn't wait for it to be over and for summer holidays to begin. One day, Mrs. Higginson made a surprise announcement. On the 17th, we're going on a field trip. Everyone cheered, and she had to tap her yardstick on the blackboard to settle us down. Sarah's dad has graciously... Oh, sorry guys, I forgot to do the British accent. Okay, here we go. One day, Mrs. Higginson made a surprise announcement. On the 17th, we're going on a field trip. Everyone cheered, and she had to tap her yardstick on the blackboard to settle us down. Sarah's dad has graciously offered us their beach and raft. I blushed and shifted self-consciously in my seat. Most of the kids thanked me and gave me looks of approval, but one did not. I felt hot breath on the nape of my neck. Sarah is so special, Annie hissed in my ear. On the morning of the field trip, everyone showed up carrying beach bags, immediately following our morning math class. We hopped on the school bus and drove to my house. Where do we get changed? Denise asked me as we walked inside. I showed my classmates the downstairs bathroom. There's one upstairs, too. Annie leaned against the wall by the bathroom door, a cocky smirk on her face. She was wearing a pair of denim shorts and a t-shirt in one hand and carried an old stained towel. Don't you have a bathing suit? Adam asked her. She waved him off. I don't need one. I can swim in these. At the beach, Mrs. Higginson went over her long list of do's and don'ts, while my father made everyone promise not to swim any farther than the raft. Then Denise, Goldie, and I plunged into the water. We were halfway to the raft when Adam swam past us. He turned his head and grinned. Race you to the raft, Sarah. No thanks, I said, swallowing a gulp of seawater. He shrugged and swam off ahead. Goldie snorted. You could have beat him. Maybe. No maybes about it, Denise quipped. You passed junior lifeguarding. I've seen your medals. I didn't want to race him, but I'll race you too. I kicked ahead and went from a relaxed breaststroke to a full-speed front crawl. Goldie and Denise didn't stand a chance. Adam smiled at me as I reached the raft. Maybe next time. Wiping the water from my eyes, I reached up to grab the metal stepladder. To my surprise, he leaned forward, grasped my hands, and hauled me up. Heat rose in my cheeks, and I self-consciously adjusted the top of my new bikini. Thank you, I murmured, praying that my friends hadn't seen what he'd done. When Goldie and Denise reached the raft, they climbed up and flopped down beside me. Goldie glanced at Adam. Then she made a face at me. Her brow arched and wiggled devilishly, and I heard the rumble of laughter deep in her throat. I whacked her and hissed under my breath, "Stop it!" I was fully aware of Adam. He sat a few feet away and glanced at me occasionally, a strange look in his eyes. I noticed his tan skin and the muscles developing in his adolescent body. I even noticed a tiny, faint birthmark on the inside of his right ankle. Denise let out a loud groan. "Oh, darn it, here comes trouble." I turned and my breath caught in my throat. Annie was swimming toward us. She wasn't a bad swimmer, but her progress was slowed down by the weight of her shorts and t-shirt. "Shoot," Goldie murmured. I was hoping she'd stay on the shore, maybe dig herself a sandcastle or something. "Come on," I said, thinking of Annie's father. "School's almost out. Let's just be nice to her for today." My friends turned and gaped at me. "I can't believe you just said be nice to her," Goldie said. "Are you crazy?" A few minutes later, Annie joined us. She wrung the water from her short black hair and sprawled in the center of the raft. She ignored everyone except Adam. She eyed him smugly, but he looked away and caught my eye. "Aha!" Annie said, her lip curling. "That white girl has a thing for you." "Oh, shut up," Adam snapped, his eyes glittering. He stood up and looked at me. Let's head back, Sarah." I clenched my hands. I wasn't going to let Annie scare me off my own raft, was I? No, I wasn't. I'm not ready to go yet. Sorry. Adam shrugged and dove into the water. Denise gave me an apologetic look. "I'm heading back too. It's too crowded out here." She glared in Annie's direction. With an unfamiliar pang of discomfort, I watched her slip into the water and catch up to Adam. His laughter was carried in the wind as he teasingly dunked her underwater. When she came up, sputtering and giggling, my heart lurched and I realized that it was the sharp tug of jealousy that gripped me. I tried to squelch it, but I couldn't help thinking, that could have been me he's teasing. Idiot. Goldie and I sat on the raft in complete silence, not knowing what to expect from Annie. Thankfully, she ignored us. After a while, we relaxed and stretched out on the sun-drenched raft. As we listened to the rhythmic motion of the waves, we were lulled into a quiet calm. Just 3 girls sharing a peaceful afternoon. I think all of us dozed off for a while. Something jabbed me and I awoke, startled. Goldie had rolled under her side, facing me, her back to Annie. "We should go." Her voice was low, a bare whisper. "What about Annie?" I asked. She shrugged. "What about her? She can stay here or come back. I don't care." She paused. "Is she looking at us?" I cautiously peered over her shoulder and studied the girl who had become my enemy. Annie was lying on her back, her dark arms folded across her chest. Her eyes were closed and her mouth was curved in contentment. I was astounded. That was the first time I'd seen Annie smile. Lowering my head, I said, "Nope, she's just lying there." After a minute, I stole another peek. My eyes were drawn to Annie's lower legs. They were covered with bruises. Her arms were dotted with small, round scars, some faded, some raw and blistered. Appalled, I dropped my head. "What's on her arms?" Goldie peeked at Annie. "Cigarette burns." I shuddered. Unable to resist, I lifted my head again, but this time Annie's eyes were open and staring directly at me. Her relaxed expression had vanished, replaced by a fierce look that left me rattled. Mrs. Higginson's whistle blew. "We should go," I said in a loud voice. "It's lunchtime." Annie scrabbled to her feet. Her t-shirt was damp and wrinkled, clinging to her like a second skin. She strode toward me and stopped a foot away. "Hey, Goldie," she said, flexing her toes and curling them over the edge. "Yeah? Race should have fallen island." I was horrified by her tactless comment, but Goldie just shook her head calmly. "No, it's too far." Annie's eyes narrowed. "Maybe for Robert." Without thinking, I whirled around and my fist connected with her arm. I heard her gasp in pain as she toppled into the water. Remembering her bruised and burned body, I flinched. I felt guilty and ashamed that I had added to her agony. She gripped the side of the raft and glared up at me. "How about you, Whitey? Or are you chicken?" She didn't wait for an answer. Instead, she started swimming in the direction of Fallen Island. Goldie stood beside me, her mouth hanging open in shock. "Annie, get back here!" I yelled, but the girl ignored me. "Come back!" Goldie hollered. We screamed at her, begged her, but she kept going. "I promised my dad I'd never swim past the raft," I told Goldie as I paced the raft. "But Should get my father or jump in right after the girl. Let's just say, should I get my father or jump in right after the girl? Hey, might have awoken the crooks. Gotta be pretty careful in these jungle parts here. Should I get my father or jump in after the girl? Goldie's fingers dug into my arm. Where is she? Annie was gone. Annie? I saw a hand thrashing about in the waves. Goldie, go get my dad. My friend stared at me as if she hadn't heard a word. I grabbed her shoulders and shook her. Get my dad now. Without waiting for an answer, I dove into the water and started the long swim toward Annie. By the time I reached her, she was closer to Fallen Island than to the raft. I was a few strokes from her when I realized that her shorts and t-shirt were pulling her under. A churning wave billowed and peaked, and suddenly she was sucked underwater. I dove under, grabbed her, and dragged her up for air. Take off your shorts, I shouted. What? Just take them off. They're too heavy. I watched as she choked on mouthfuls of salty water. With some awkward maneuvering, she was able to free herself from the waterlogged clothes, and they quickly sank below, out of sight. Treading water beside me, she said, Now what do? We swim to Fallen Island. It's closer. She glanced apprehensively at the island. We'll make it, I said. We swam hard, fighting the waves in the current. I pulled ahead of her and urged her to keep moving. Soon there were more than a few strokes that separated us, but I thought if I kept going, she'd follow me. Then I heard her cry out behind me. Without hesitation, I turned back. I was too late. Annie's head had disappeared beneath the waves. I swam back to her, but she was gone. I dove underwater and searched for her. My hands met only water and the odd piece of seaweed. I came up screaming, Annie! I was terrified that she was drowning beneath me, so I dove again. Once more, I surfaced for air, empty-handed. Where is she? Something brushed against my legs. Annie? I took a huge breath, filled my lungs, and pushed below the surface. I opened my eyes underwater, ignoring the sharp sting of salt water. Driving my arms downward, I dove deeper. Pretend you're diving for rings. The water was shadowy and murky. I couldn't distinguish anything, just dim shapes and flashes of iridescent light. Then I felt it, a gentle nudge on my back. I turned my head. Oh, God! Water escaped from my lips as I gazed into the face of a killer whale. I was paralyzed. We stared at each other, nose to nose, and I sensed a kind of mutual communication, an understanding. Without thinking, I reached out my hand, unafraid of the huge animal. As soon as I touched its slick skin, I recalled the dream I'd had the night after meeting Goldie. The dream where I had swam with the whales. The whale turned, its sleek body rubbing across my legs. Surprised, I released more bubbles of air. Then my chest began to burn. I looked up with wide eyes, realizing something with impending doom. The surface was far above me, and I was running out of air. I panicked. My hands flailed, and I fought to get to the surface. It was just beyond my reach. I'm not going to make it. My heart strained against my chest. Pa-pum, pa-pum. Desperate for air, I clawed at the water. My head felt like it was going to explode. I pulled upward, reaching toward the light, clawing, but the light was too far away. I'm drowning, like Annie and Robert.